Thank you, and I'm very happy to kick it off the second presenters of the session, Dr. Igor Miladinovic and Dr. Sigrid Scheffer-Wenzel from the University of Applied Science campus in Vienna, Austria. I kindly ask Dr. Igor, I think, or Dr. Sigrid to share his screen. The presentation title is An Approach to Continuous Supervision of Bachelor's and Master Thesis in Engineering Studies. Igor Miladinovic is the head of the Bachelor Degree Program Computer Science and Digital Communication, as well as Master Degree Program Software Design and Engineering at the University of Applied Science campus in Vienna. He received a doctoral degree in electrical engineering from Vienna University of Technology in 2003. Between 2000 and 2005, he worked in telecommunication as researcher for Vienna University of Technology and Researcher Center for Telecommunication Vienna. In parallel, he worked as lecturer at two universities, teaching courses, Introduction to Telecommunication, Mobile App Development, Fundamentals of Mobile Business, and Ubiquitous and Pervasive Computing, and supervising master thesis and bachelor thesis students. So please, Dr. Igor Miladinovic and Dr. Sigrid Scheffer, you can start your presentation. I kindly ask to all participants to insert question and information suggested in the Q&A box or in the chat. So, presenters, the floor is yours.
Thank you for this introduction. Yeah, we are going to present you our approach for continuous supervision of bachelor's and master thesis in engineering studies. We also have written a paper about it, so you can find more information in the paper. Next slide, please. Thank you. In this talk, we will shortly talk about the goal and challenges of master's and bachelor's thesis, and then derive a categorization of different types of supervisors, and also present our approach, how we suggest to structure such a supervision process. And we can, with this process, we can address all supervisor types. So at the end of a study, students usually need to write a scientific final thesis. And in our talk, in our paper, we focused on bachelor's and master's thesis. And these theses should demonstrate the maturity and readiness of students to investigate a certain complex topic in depth. And this requires two major changes in student behavior, because students need to work more self-organized than in the rest of the study, and students need to deal with complex problems, while most of the other courses deal with complicated problems. So the major difference here is that solving complicated problems requires expert knowledge, and usually you can follow good practices, whereas complex problems need new solutions usually. Yeah, both Igor and we have a lot of teaching experience already, so more than 15 years, and we also have supervised a lot of thesis in this time. And from this experience, and also from a literature survey, we can see that that the supervision process and how we structure this process is a very important aspect in how far students are able to successfully finish their thesis project. Therefore, we will first now talk about the goals and challenges of scientific thesis, and then present our categorization of supervisors that are categorized along 2 dimensions, responsibility and autonomy, and we will derive our recommendation for a supervising process which addresses all types of supervisors. Yeah, let's talk about the primary goal of bachelor's and master's thesis. The successful completion of a thesis should demonstrate several skills. For example, students need to have or need to show a deep understanding of a specialized topic, which in our case is the computer science domain in the bachelor program and software engineering in the master program. Second, they need to demonstrate their ability to work in a self-organized manner, because there is usually no strict process to follow in order to be successful. And finally, another critical success factor, as we call it, is that students need to have social skills to cooperate with a supervisor or supervisors and also stakeholders in the company for theses that are done in collaboration with our industrial partners. And all these skills are also highly demanded by the industry, and therefore we define as our ultimate goal of a thesis that students, that a thesis should prepare students for their careers in industry. And this is shown in this goal tree at the top. So the major goal of bachelor's and master thesis, as we see it at our university, is that it should prepare students for their future careers. In order to develop these skills that are required to achieve the goal, there are also several necessary conditions that are listed or shown at the top of this figure. For example, students need to be able need to conduct an extensive literature review. They also need to formulate a scientific research question. And if these conditions are met, they are able to deepen their knowledge in this advanced topic. And there are several other conditions, necessary conditions, that are related with developing these skills. And if we now look at the challenges of a thesis, so we have seen that a bachelor's or master thesis is expected to be good preparation for the student's further career. However, we still see that there always is a number of students who are not able to successfully complete their thesis, even though they have successfully completed all other parts of their studies. And we have analyzed this situation. I have to mention that at our university, we have strict deadlines for students to submit their final thesis. So for every student, there are 3 deadlines. And if he misses the last deadline, the 3rd deadline, he or she cannot finish their study. Therefore, we have defined as the most undesirable effect in the context of supervising bachelor's and master's thesis that students cannot meet their deadline. So they cannot hand in their thesis in time. And in this figure, we analyzed the main reasons leading to this effect in a so-called current reality tree. We focused on this one undesirable effect, as it is the most undesirable effect. And we have identified 3 causes that lead to this undesirable effect. And these 3 causes are, for example, insufficient writing skills of students, or a lack of self-learning skills, and a lack of time. So these are the main reasons for not meeting the deadline. We have further analyzed these reasons. I will not go into detail here, but only show the main root causes. So there are usually always root causes for each undesirable effect we can witness. And we have identified these 2 root causes, which are that in our study, we had a very strong focus on developing technical skills in our study. It is an engineering curriculum, and we had a very strong focus on these technical skills. So therefore, students or a part of students were not able to further develop their writing skills or develop their other social skills. Another root cause we identified was insufficient supervision, and we addressed these both root causes. The first root cause was addressed by introducing several soft skill subjects into our curriculum. We also have several subjects where students have to write little papers, seminar papers, and which prepare them for their thesis. And we have developed a supervision process that should address different types of students as well as different types of supervisors. And I will now hand over to Igor, who will present you these findings.
Okay, thank you, Sigrid, for the introduction. So now we basically are familiar with the situation. We have analyzed what is going well, what is going not so well. And out of this, we have derivated this figure. We defined 2 dimensions of supervising. The first one is the responsibility, whether the responsibility is with the supervisor or with the student. And of course, if you take this x-axis, they are not just 2 types, so supervisor or student. They are a continuous axis, meaning that the amount of the responsibility which lies at students can be more or less, and from 0 to full responsibility with students. And this is something which is which depends on the supervisor himself or herself. So we are all somewhere on this axis. Either we trust the students or a lot, or we trust the students not so much. And the y-axis is autonomy. And this is more with the students. We have different students. Some of them are self-organized. Some of them are not very well organized, and they need strong guidance. Also, this axis, y-axis, is not with just 2 values. It's continuous axis, so the students with very strong guidance and fully self-organized or some self-organized to some extent, everything is possible. And based on these 2 dimensions, we defined 4 quadrants. The first one is a controller, which is a supervisor type who feels responsible for the outcome of the thesis, and the students who need strong guidance. And then gatekeeper, meaning the students are self-organized, but I would like to have a full control as a supervisor, so I will define some milestones and act as a kind of gatekeeper. So I will define the gates, and the students need to pass these gates. And then for the supervisors, which leave the responsibility to be with the students, if the student needs a strong guidance, then it's a kind of supporter, a coach, a lot of discussions, a lot of literature recommendation, a lot of support. Or here, if the students is self-organized, it is a kind of coach. It's kind of coaching in the sessions, which are just small corrections of the direction of the development of the thesis if necessary. And we see now, even if we define for ourselves a supervisor where we are here on this x-axis, we need to act differently depending on the students which we are supervising. So, and this was also our goal. We wanted to design a process which is not a fixed process, but which is a process which will be adapted according to the needs of students. So we wanted to have a kind of individualized process for each student, so that each student can get support which he or she needs. And we divided this process in the development of the process. We defined 4 phases. And with this process, we want, actually what we want to do, we want to address this insufficient supervision from this diagram with challenges which Sigrid has shown to you, this one. So we want to address this point. As Sigrid already mentioned, for this point, we introduced several soft skills or professional skills courses, which is not the topic of this presentation. And now we focused on this root cause. And here you can see the complete process from the beginning until the end of the supervision. We start usually in the semester before the actual start of the thesis. We present all the possible topics. It's a kind of pool of topics and pool of supervisors, and the students are able to vote for these topics. It's a kind of priority voting. Each student will have priority 1, 2, or 3 for the topic, and then we are making related groups together, usually 4 to 7 students in one group with the related topics, and this group will be then supervised by one supervisor which is responsible for this topic. In the second phase, we start with explanation of the process, with explanation of expectations. This is at the beginning of semester where the thesis takes place. And it is very important to obtain a very early feedback on a research question, on the contents, on the writing style. So usually we define a deadline for the first 5 pages and the research question and the first literature. And then the students are getting this early feedback, so they are able to correct it. If something is going in the wrong direction, we are able to correct it very early. And this is meant by this early feedback. And we also work with best practice examples. There are some very good theses which we are just giving to students just to show how it should be, also what is expected from a thesis. Because as Sigrid told at the beginning, this is the first time maybe for some of them to be to deal with a complex problem, to be more or less forced to work self-organized, to look for literature. There is no book or something like that as for a classical examination. It is self-organized work. And the third phase is actually the phase with the longest duration. This is the complete semester. It's a kind of incremental process. The students are submitting more and more of the thesis, another 10 pages, another 10 pages, or chapter, and it needs not to be amount of pages. And they are getting the feedback, timely feedback on these submissions. This is also important because if they submit something and they are 2 weeks without the feedback, then yeah, it is they are not motivated to write more because they have a feeling that it makes no difference to submit something or not. So timely feedback is very important. This is at least our experience. We also work with peer feedback. So the other students are reading the thesis of one student and giving him or her feedback. At the end, there is a final feedback. There's a peer review. So each thesis will be reviewed by at least 2 other students. And we have a kind of retro, what worked well, what could be optimized. And there is a final submission at the end, which is official submission. And this is the work, the thesis, which will be graded. So concluding, we have presented this concept. We introduced the concept in order to increase success rate for the bachelor and master thesis, or if you want to reduce the dropout rate. And we started with just 2 groups out of all groups with this process, and we have seen, also we have experienced much more students which were able to finish the thesis on time in these 2 groups. And today, almost all supervisors at our university work with this concept, not because they have to work with this concept, it's still an option, but the majority of them accepted this concept because it is because of the success rate. And the bottom line, the key success factors in a master or bachelor thesis, the process and the expectations needs to be communicated at the beginning. Support and feedback from the beginning on, and support has to be individual. And we need to design an environment where the students will work continuously on the thesis. So that it is not the solution to write a thesis in the last 2 weeks of semesters. It must be also the best way is to start at the beginning of semester and to work continuously on the thesis. And the intermediate feedback is also important to see whether it is going in the right direction or not. So thank you very much for your attention. Sigrid and I are now open for questions.
Thank you very much, Sigrid and Igor, for your powerful presentation. I have a question on 2 questions for you from the Q&A box. The first one I think is linked to Sigrid's presentation, the first part of your presentation. Matic, I visto ask, you pointed out that you have strict deadlines. Is it so that if the students do not meet the 3rd deadline, he or she cannot graduate? If so, what is your dropout rate? It is an important challenge.
Yes, for each exam and also for the bachelor thesis or master thesis, we always have 3 possibilities. And if students do not submit their thesis the 3rd deadline, they cannot, they have the opportunity to repeat the year, and then they can still finish the study. But if they also miss these 3 deadlines from repeating year, then they cannot finish their study. So this is the system of the universities of applied sciences. They want to encourage students to finish their study in time, and therefore students have strict deadlines where they need to submit their thesis.
And this is why these guidelines that you share with us are so important, not for your university system. And the second question is, are all the topics given by the university and students select from them, especially regarding the first phase topic selection?
Mm-hmm. So we have a pool of supervisors, about 15 supervisors, and each of them is proposing some topics, usually 3 to 5 topics. They're not given by the university, they are coming from the supervisors. So if you see supervisors as a part of the university, then you're right, they are given by the university, but they are individual of the supervisors. And we have a mix of supervisors. Some of them are working for the industry and teaching at our university part-time, and some of them are full-time at the university. So the topics are, the majority of the topics are coming from the industry. And the students also have the possibility, if they work for a company and the company is also active in a research, they can also propose an own topic. And if you have one supervisor which can supervise this topic, this is then also possible. And the students, there's then a number of topics, about 40 topics, let's say, and the students are able to select between these topics.
Okay, this is so close to the Italian university system. So thank you. One question from the chat box from Rainer. Do you also experience repeated specific effort to clarify contents that you already explained? For example, meaning some kind of waste that you could reduce? Thank you.
Yes, of course, we need to repeat several things, but we also have checklists, for example, regarding formal aspects like how to do the caption for a figure or how to cite or something like that. But of course, there are several things we need to say more often. But as we do the whole discussions in group, students also learn from other feedback. So when we discuss one thesis, there may be things that other students can also take for their thesis. So yeah, we experienced it as a very efficient process.
So thank you very much, Sigrid and Igor, for your presentation. I kindly support all the participants also to use the WOVA app and ask specific questions to our presenters for this session through the app. And thank you so much. Please enjoy the conference, and thanks also to Miranda that support us as part of the conference team.
Thank you also for the perfect moderation.
Oh, thank you to you.